Oh, hi there. I bet you're wondering why I'm standing in my office playing with a lighter. Well, I'll get to that in a moment. We are finally at the end of the Pathway to Space course. Thank the heavens, right? I'm honored to be delivering you the final lecture and one that I'm very excited to give to you. I hope that you've made some connections to the content in this course that will help create your own personal pathway to space and guide you as you walk down it. As you know, I am very interested in space, but for many of you, you may be wondering why. What inspired me in my life and guided me on the path that I am so that I'm right here in front of you now? Well, one of those individuals was my grandpa. Here's a picture of him and me when I was about 3 or 4 years old. He's showing me a grasshopper. I still remember this day. As of right now, I'm thinking of it. He was my buddy, and during my very formative years, we would watch the Three Stooges and go camping, where he would let me cuss like a sailor the whole time. But he was also an accomplished scientist, a chemist to be exact, and I would spend the weekends in his basement lab doing crazy things that most parents today would not even allow. A big part of who I am was because he introduced me to the wonder of science at such an early age. He died when I was 13, but I think of him often, and I wonder what my life would have been like had I had the privilege of having his guidance for my whole life. I was also influenced by pictures like these right here in my wall of my office, constantly reminding me of what inspired me to be involved with space. I was only 2 years old when the Apollo astronauts were driving a car on the moon, but I'm still excited to think about what that must have been like. And I hope that someday, before I die, I have the privilege of walking on the moon myself. Also, artwork of places we might go as a species someday in space really inspired me. Images like these gave me a glimpse of the future I wanted to be a part of no matter what. Have you ever thought of what may have caused our species to go from cave dwelling, right here, cave dwelling land and sea explorers impressed with making fire? Many of us are still impressed with making fire. To space explorers like this one right here, Bruce McCandless flying all by himself in space. What made that happen? Space as a place, or as a career path for that matter, is relatively new. Much of what we associate with human space exploration has happened only in the last 60 years. In many ways, we have to look at only a few individuals, 5 to be exact, in the last 2 centuries that have made something even as small as the Space Miner and this course even possible. As the saying goes, we are standing on the shoulders of giants, folks who have built the path that you and I are walking on right now. And today I get the privilege to share the incredible story of these giants and the one item that inspired them and forever changed humans from land and sea explorers to space explorers. Let me sum up my story with one interesting family tree right here, represented in this incredible diagram made in PowerPoint. It started in 1828 with this baby, who did something in 1865 that 3 other babies found about 10 or 20 years later, and then went on to do some incredible things that changed rocketry, and in doing so enabled humankind to travel among the stars. There's even a surprise baby right over here in 1912 that joins us later in the story. All this will be revealed from how we became cave people just on the sea and 60 years somewhat later, spacefaring species. But first, we have to go back in time and look at where these rockets got started, the very early rockets. And to do that, I have a special surprise and tool to help bring this whole lecture to life. Let's go, I want to show you it. There it is, everybody. This car has not only warp drive, as you can see right here, but it has 1.21 gigawatts of extreme flux capacitor power. This baby can go anywhere. So let's go start our journey through rocket history. With the push of a few buttons, this baby will take us anywhere, time and space, in a fraction of a second. I got my time computer here, my flux capacitor. I think we're ready to go, and with a little bit of your imagination, I hopefully can bring this story of rocket history to life. So let's get started. Our first stop is 13th century China. So I'm going to go ahead and put that into my computer here. Okay, we made it to our first stop, 13th century China. Take a look. As early as the 13th century, there are accounts of Chinese using rockets. Some of these rockets were simple fire arrows, but others were large enough that they could be heard from 15 miles away when launched and destroyed everything for a half-mile in all directions upon impact. Well, time to get to our next destination, India, 1799. Let me enter it into the computer. India used rockets against Britain in the Battle of something I can't pronounce, but you can see right here. Here we are, India, 1799. Take a look at what's going on here. While the British won the battle, their losses were significant because of Tipu Sultan's rockets. Wow, that's amazing. Now, let's take a look at what the British did with this newfound technology and where they used it. We'll need to go to 1814, the Battle of Baltimore. This battle is the very battle that inspired our national anthem. The British took their rockets and technology back to develop them further. Britain tested these improved rockets on the United States in 1814 in the Battle of Baltimore, and the rocket's red glare gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. So what's my point? These little journeys that we just took in our time machine here illustrate one thing about rockets. In all of the history to this point, rockets equal weapons. Weapons that cause destruction and death. But we're going to take one more stop, our next stop that is, to 1865, and take a peek at what changed that philosophy from rockets equal weapons to rockets equal a mode of transportation. So let's go. Enter into my time circuit here, 1865. Here we go. Here we are, 1865. That's Jules Verne, everybody. He wasn't a scientist. He wasn't an engineer. He was a poet, a playwright, and a writer. And in 1865, he published From the Earth to the Moon. In this book, he presented the world with a new vision for rockets. Technically, his book described the rocket as a large cannon, or gun, but in principle, it was a rocket. He even made some calculations on the velocity needed to get to the moon. His point was that rockets could be a method of transportation, a vehicle that could take humans to the moon and beyond, finally breaking the bonds of Earth. In this sci-fi book of the 1800s, he discusses the fundraising, the process for building the launch site, which turns out to be very near where Kennedy Space Center is today. Look at some of these cool pictures from the illustrated version of the book. They present space travel in a very luxurious way. My favorite is this one. A dog, books, couch. This person is going on a road trip in style. Yeah, see ya. Nice to see you, Jules. Nice. That's amazing. We got to see Jules Verne writing his famous book. So you may be asking yourself, what is it that one book could make such a huge impact on humankind? How could that be possible? Well, in a world without media, internet, games that we all play, something like this could go viral for much longer. Think about books that you've heard about, well, the Bible or Harry Potter or To Kill a Mockingbird. They're still around and people still read them. This book was read by our three founding fathers of modern rocketry, heavily influenced their lives and perspectives about the use of rockets. And I strongly believe that without this book, we would not be a spacefaring species and we would never have sent people to the moon. So with that, we need to go meet our very first baby of rocket history. We're going to be heading to Russia, and the year is 1896. Wow, here we are in Russia. Look like such a bad place. Let's go take a look. See if we can meet our first rocket father. Our first rocketry guru is Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. Born in Russia in 1857, he became deaf at the age of 10 due to the scarlet fever. From that point, he was homeschooled and spent much of his time reading books, including From the Earth to the Moon. He also came up with the famous rocket equation. He was even the first person to think of the space elevator in 1895. Like so many of us trying to find our own way on the pathway to space, there are those that help guide us and keep us on the path. Konstantin was no different. He had the support and encouragement of another prominent Russian scientist, Dmitry Mendeleev. Who is he, you might ask? Ever hear of the periodic table? He created it and was famous for it. His support of Konstantin was significant in keeping him on his rocket path. When you think of Tsiolkovsky, think theory. He is the author of the famous rocket equation, an equation still used today. Konstantin published 400 papers with over 90 of them focused on space travel and rockets. Later in his life, he became quite the visionary for space travel. He presented designs for spacecraft, airlocks, multiple stage rockets, and even growing plants in space. In 1928, he published The Will of the Universe, in which he presented a vision and plan for how humans would one day colonize the Milky Way. No, you're the best, Konstantin. See you later. Man, he was really nice. That was amazing to have spent some time with Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. Hope you enjoyed that. I want you to think about Tsiolkovsky as a true visionary. He was like a Carl Sagan or a Neil deGrasse Tyson of his time. And without his vision, I don't think many of the things we ended up doing to this day would have happened. Our next rocket baby, we're going to the United States of America, and we're headed to 1899. Let's go. All right, well, we're here. Flux capacitor is working just fine. I want to go ahead and tell you before we meet this person, his name is Robert Goddard. You may have heard of the Goddard Space Flight Center, or you've seen probably some pictures of him. I'm really excited to show you a couple things about his life, so let's go take a look. Our next rocket baby was born in 1882, Robert H. Goddard. This is one of my favorite pictures. So much to see in it. Limit of balloons, limit of the atmosphere, the Earth, the moon. In this one picture, Goddard is giving the world his vision, his life's dream. To travel beyond Earth, you need something different. You need rockets. For much of his life, he struggled with staying healthy, nearly dying several times. During his early days, unable to go to school because of his health, he became an avid reader, and like Tsiolkovsky, he was influenced by Verne and many other sci-fi books. On October 19, 1899, he climbed a cherry tree and was struck by a vision of traveling to Mars. He even imagined how it might be done. Upon climbing down from the tree, he said his existence now had purpose, and for the rest of his life, he celebrated October 19th as his anniversary day. He graduated high school in Massachusetts in 1901 as valedictorian and gave an impressive speech, which included the following line: "It has often been proved true that the dream of yesterday is the hope of today and the reality of tomorrow." He went on to get a bachelor's in physics from Worcester Polytechnic in 1908. In 1914, his 2 patents for multi-stage rockets with solid fuel and 1 for liquid fuels were registered. Over his life, he was granted 214 patents. He also proved early on that a rocket will work in a vacuum and that it does not need anything to push against. In 1917, he wrote a proposal to the Smithsonian Institution to help support his work with rockets. They gave him $5,000, which at the time was quite a bit. However, World War I began shortly after, and much of his effort and likely his funding went to the development of the bazooka, a simple but effective shoulder-mounted rocket launcher. His proposal actually turned out to be his future book, A Method of Reaching Extreme Altitudes, which was published in 1919 and is considered an authority on rocket science. On March 16, 1926, Goddard launched the world's first liquid rocket. It went 41 feet high during a 2.5-second flight. Many of you have likely seen this picture of Goddard standing next to this first rocket. What he is holding is actually the rocket stand or support. The rocket itself is the small frame inside the support, standing much taller than Goddard himself. Goddard continued to launch rockets, and newspapers started covering them, and more people learned of his launches and became interested in them. One such person was this one, a celebrity at the time. Many of you might recognize him as the first person to fly across the Atlantic Ocean, Charles Lindbergh. He became very interested in Goddard's work and wanted to help him. He convinced this man, Daniel Guggenheim, to support Goddard's work by giving Goddard $100,000 in 1930. This was approximately $2 million in today's money. It was also during the Great Depression of 1929, so it was like winning the lottery. So what does one do when you win the lottery? You move. Where did Goddard move to? Roswell, New Mexico. The dry air helped his health, and it had wide open spaces for him to launch his rockets and few people. It is also a place where some folks believe an alien spaceship crashed in 1947. That is a topic for another video capsule. From 1926 to 1941, Goddard launched 35 rockets. From an outsider point of view, one would say many of them were failures, but Goddard would disagree because he always learned something from his failures. He perfected many technologies during these so-called failures that are still in use today in rockets, like multiple combustion chambers, nozzles, guidance control, and turbopumps. Without his contributions, we would not be travelers of the stars. Many believe he ushered in the space age. Goddard not only developed theories, he built and tested them. To further add significance to this, he did this with little public and government support, and many times with the complete opposite. He was ridiculed by his peers, and even the New York Times said he only seems to lack the knowledge ladled out daily in high school. In 1969, the day after humans landed on the moon, they printed a correction. NASA named a center after him, and many still use his work to make successful launches into space. He once said, "Every vision is a joke until the first man accomplishes it. Once realized, it becomes commonplace." See ya. Wow. That was Robert Goddard. That was really cool to get some time with him. Well, so, next stop, 1905. We're headed to essentially what is Romania today to meet our last founding father of modern rocketry. All right, here we are. Let's go say hi to him. Our next baby was born in what is now today Romania in 1894. He was very much influenced by Jules Verne. When his mother gave him a copy of the book at age 11, he devoured it, and soon after had it memorized. And by age 14, he had his own design for a rocket. His name was Hermann Oberth. In 1922, his doctoral dissertation, "The Rocket in Planetary Space," was rejected for being utopian. He was motivated to show everyone he could be something without a doctor title. He said, "Our educational system is like an automobile which has strong rear lights, brightly illuminating the past, but looking forward, things are barely discernible." So he published it on his own, and it became a commercial success. He joined the Spaceflight Society, which was an amateur rocketry group that was inspired by Oberth's book. He was teaching physics and math at high school for 14 years. In 1929, Hermann Oberth conducted a test of an engine powered by liquid fuels. Now this wasn't a rocket, but it was an engine, and it lasted for about a few seconds. But during this test, he had an assistant with him, and this assistant became very famous, and we're going to learn about him next. Now, Hermann Oberth contributed a lot to rocketry, but it was his influence, his teaching and mentoring of this assistant that many believe is why he is one of our founding fathers of rocketry. So next, we're going to go meet this famous assistant. We're going to go back in time a little bit further to 1927, Berlin. Let's go. So here we are, 1927 Berlin, and we're going to meet our famous assistant, our last baby on this crazy journey. His name is Wernher von Braun, and he's about to conduct one of the most famous tests in his life. Let's take a look. Von Braun was born in 1912 At age 12, he strapped numerous fireworks to his toy wagon and launched it into the city, causing a large noise and a small fire. Just a few years later, he acquired a copy of Oberth's book, which inspired him to do better in math and physics and pursue rocketry. Von Braun was also born into a world and a place that provided little options in having his work become a reality. His world was one of war and world domination. In 1936, at the age of 24, he became the director of Germany's military rocket program. While his passion in life was to go to other worlds, his own world initially took that desire and brought it to bear on using rockets as weapons once again. This was the V-2. The V-2 was a rocket that brought death and destruction from the skies above during World War II. Near the end of World War II, when the Nazis were about to lose the war, Hitler ordered von Braun's entire team of 10,000 to be executed. Instead, von Braun surrendered to the Allied forces. Both the Allied forces and the Soviet Union were looking for von Braun and his team. They wanted to capture their work on rockets and wanted to add it to their own. Some say the only reason the U.S. ended up with von Braun and his team was that they were closer. The capture of von Braun and approximately 1,500 of his team was called Operation Paperclip. It is worth stopping here for a moment to take a side journey about the significance of von Braun and his capture by the U.S. to explain its significance to the post-World War II world and the ultimate race to space. Operation Paperclip contributed to the start of the Cold War between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. At the end of World War II, both sides wanted to obtain the knowledge von Braun and his team created. Which side did would undoubtedly have an advantage in rocket development for both exploration and weaponry. While the U.S. did get von Braun and 1,500 of his team, some parts, drawings, and even some V-2 rockets, the Soviet Union did not want to be left behind. Using unconventional techniques called gunpoint, they recruited 2,000 of von Braun's team in a single night under an operation I can't pronounce, but you can read here. Basically, the story goes that they got all of these folks in a room, gave them lots of entertainment and drinks, and said at the end of the night, "You're all moving to Soviet Union with us to start our rocket program." And many of them said, "No, I'm not." And that's when they looked at them and said, "Hey, well, if you ever want to see your families again, that's where they're at. So you're leaving with us tonight." The point I'm trying to make is that von Braun, having the benefit of those trailblazers before him, Tsiolkovsky, Goddard, and Oberth, created a program that changed the world. And that changing world went to extremes to take that knowledge further and farther. Von Braun's time in the U.S. led to this country's entrance into the space race. He contributed to our first satellite in orbit. You can see him in this picture holding Explorer 1 with James Van Allen and William Pickering. This first satellite discovered the radiation belts around the Earth, now called the Van Allen belts. His rocket also launched our citizens into space as part of Projects Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo, the latter landing humans on the moon. There is no question that without von Braun, humans would have never walked on the moon. His ultimate rocket, the Saturn V, is still to this day the most powerful rocket ever launched from the surface of the Earth. In the days after humans first set foot on the moon, a parade was thrown for von Braun in Huntsville, Alabama, honoring his work. He too was a visionary when it came to space. He dreamed of going to Mars, space stations, space planes. He saw it as humans' way to explore. He said that it's man's nature to explore, to move on, and when we stop doing that, we are no longer human. Yeah, that's great. No longer human. That's a great quote. No longer human. Yeah, I'll see you Sunday. Yeah, I'll meet you for dinner. It's fine. Okay, yeah, that von Braun, I tell you, what an amazing individual. While we haven't seen humans on Mars yet, we have seen space planes with the space shuttle and the space station, and who knows where we're going to go next. So this wraps up our journey through time and space, learning how we became spacefaring species when we started out as cave dwellers impressed with fire. How one book, 3 babies, and a famous assistant made all that possible. But I do want to take you one more place, and I actually want to go into the future. Around the year 2025 is when something happened that I want to talk about, but to really see its full impact, we're going to go all the way to 2035. And in that little bit of space, I'll tell you a little bit of something. But let me go ahead and enter that. Malfunction. Whoa! Going in the future is a lot more bumpier than going in the past, but we're here. Believe it or not, we're in Boulder, Colorado. And we're here to celebrate you because you are our future. And what you did in the future has changed the course of humanity forever. You basically designed an engine that runs on an Arduino, weighs less than a car. It can lift the equivalent of 10 Saturn V payloads to low Earth orbit, and it runs on salt water. And it launched right here from where we're at today. I'm going to go show you something I think you'll be really impressed. It's a monument dedicated to you and your achievements. So let's go take a look at it. The Denver Post, which is a newspaper, reported that you were one Fruit Loop short of a full box. Your friends on Facebook said your wheel is spinning, but your hamster isn't home. But all vote you person of the century when you land on Mars in 2035 after launching from this park right here in your personal launch vehicle. Wow, that slide was amazing. I hope that someday someone makes a monument for me with a slide. So how many of you are laughing right now? Raise your hands. It's kind of hard to see, but my guess is some of you are. And that was my point. Because when you present the world with a crazy vision, people laugh at you. Robert Goddard, Tsiolkovsky, Herman Oberth, everyone laughed at them, ridiculed them, but now there are monuments and memorials honoring them all over the world. And no one is laughing at them now. If you feel you have a vision, pursue it, no matter what people say about you, no matter how much they laugh at you. Make it real. Because once it's real, no one will be laughing and you'll be rich. Well, we should probably go back to the present. I'm going to stop at one other place, and as we go, I'm going to tell you a little bit of story about what's happening in the present day that relates to sort of what we've just talked about. I want to talk to you about one more person specifically that people did laugh at, and that was Elon Musk. In our own time, Elon Musk made his money with a little service called PayPal. When he said he wanted to start a rocket company, I even laughed. The first time I met him, I thought he is a nut, as did many others around me. But many years later, he is leading the way with his company SpaceX. But still, he presents going to the moon and Mars in grand ways, and we still laugh. I think laughing at bold individuals only means they will make it. Don't let the views of others deter your dreams in this field or any other. I want to close with a word from that famous assistant.
My friends, there was dancing here in the streets of Huntsville when our first satellite orbited the Earth. And there was dancing again when the first Americans landed on the moon. I'd like to ask you, don't hang up your dancing slippers. And I would like to finish up with a very fitting word once spoken by Osa Johnson, where he said, if you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. Just put the foundations under them.
Made it. I hope this video, through the stories of these individuals, help you see that anything is possible. It just requires you to take that first step on your path and let your inspiration keep your feet moving.